you know, I used to, when I was in the Canadian League, I worked as the quality control coach and on the defense. So I looked at opposing offenses. So I looked at, Jeff Garcia and Doug Flutie and Anthony Calvillo and Damon Allen and all these different guys, and studied all their offensive things. And then I also did personnel and worked with Joe Woolley and Rick Mueller, and we worked on our negotiation list and tried to improve our roster. But I used to have one major project every week, and that was I worked for the defensive coordinator, and he would say, I want to report that on the eve of every game from you that basically says how we're going to lose. I want you to think like our opponent, studying us, and how I want you to make your greatest argument for not just that we're going to lose, how we're going to lose.
Yeah.
So I can contemplate that as I'm going through it.
That's some real winner mindset right there. I want to think about
and it was a hard thing to do, right? Because it's like I had to factor in like what they have done, what we do.
I know what you think
their coaches, what their coaches are going to think, what their tendency is.
Yeah.
So then you had to kind of know who the play caller was and something about his personality. And so sometimes you had to go watch him in other games to see what he likes to do in certain situations. You could look at the numbers, but you had to watch the film.
Totally.
Anyway.
I do that thought exercise every week for the Merc. How do the 49ers win? How do the 49ers lose?
So let's play that right here. The Niners are 10-point favorites. I watched the entire first 3 games of the Patriots.
Yeah.
And after I watched it, I thought to myself, I can see how the Patriots can win.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want to hear from you, and then I'll tell you what I think. But how do the Patriots beat the Niners on Sunday as 10-point dogs on the road against a team that, thinks they're going to the Super Bowl and is incredibly hungry for a victory, a one-sided victory?
It's pretty. I mean, it's this is a lot more straightforward than most weeks because there's really one path, and that path is Ramondre Stevenson has 150 plus rushing yards, and in specifics, they run inside zone with impunity, and they go directly at the 49ers defensive tackles, and they get to the second level and they block Fred Warner, and they leave Devondre Campbell one-on-one with Stevenson, and they just take that matchup again and again and again. And when eventually the 49ers realize, okay, we have to put Huff in the box repeatedly and basically make him the weak side linebacker, and they'll do that swap, and we saw it last week against the Rams, you do exactly what the Rams did, which is now we're running outside zone. But we're going to run outside zone with 2 tight ends or with a fullback as well. And they went into a lot of 12 personnel last week. The Rams, who had run 100% of their plays from 11 personnel, they were playing 12 personnel. And they went outside zone with 12 personnel. Why? They ran it at Mooney Ward again and again and again. You just steal the game plan because you don't have as much offensive talent or the quarterback as the Rams do. And that's the beat up Rams. You just steal Sean McVay's game plan because that game plan was about attacking 2 players repeatedly. Now, you could perhaps, if you had a better quarterback, and you do have good receivers, expound upon that as to attack Jair Brown as well. And then maybe on a if you're really getting tertiary here, you could say Isaac Yiadom get in the mix too. But what you're doing is you're going defensive tackle in 59, or you're going right at 7 again and again. And until one of those 2 pairs stops you, you just keep running the football. And that's how they won their game this year. On the flip side, they got a very sound defense, even if it lacks explosion. And it's an almost impossible ask, but probably easier with this 49ers team than most because of what we talk about all the time with separation and things like that. With Ayuk getting out of his breaks a lot slower than he looked last year. And I even went back and watched last year's. I mean, it's just kind of, he looks like he's molasses. Which Juwan Jennings, who just doesn't separate. He's just a tough son of a bitch who, if you get the ball anywhere near him, he's coming down with it, as we saw last week when he mossed that poor fella. Like, you do what the Rams, you just steal the Rams game plan and you rush 3. You mix up who's coming if you want to bring a 4th or a 5th. You try to get as many people in the box as possible and then have them scatter like the Vikings did the week before that. And you trust a guy like Christian Gonzalez to hold on to his receiver for 5 seconds. And you wait until Brock Purdy gets impatient and makes a mistake. You go too high every time. You trust your linebackers. You give up some stuff on the ground. You blitz every now and again in very clear passing downs, and you trust your corners, who are very good, to stay with your guys who are just not separating at the level that they should be, whether because they couldn't really separate or because they're not the same player they once were. And you wait until Brock Purdy hands you something. If he never hands you something, you're not winning the game. If he does hand you something, hopefully for their sake, the offensive game plan has been sound enough and conservative enough in its inability to turn the ball over that you can eke out a victory. 10 points is a pretty big spread to get a full-on money line underdog win, but that would be, in this case, how you'd go about it. And I know that was both extremely simple and way too complicated and ornate. I'll also throw in, do not sleep at all on the Patriots wide receivers. I mean, they got 2 young guys in Polk and Baker who are just dynamite. They're really good. And then Pop Douglas is a tricky little sumbitch to bring down. I don't like their quarterback, but I guess you could do worse. I don't know how many more guys you could do worse with, but you could do worse. So that's how the 49ers lose. They just have the Rams game plan completely stolen and executed at perhaps a lower level.
I think I first of all, I think the 49ers are going to win. Why?
Agree.
Because I think, Nick Bosa is going to abuse Caden Wallace, and I think he's going to be living in the lap of Jacoby Brissett. But I will say this. If I'm the Patriots, I come out and run the heck out of Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah. And he's a bull. He's an absolute bull. And they, they've had success running it. They've got some big offensive linemen. They love to run behind the right guard, Layden Robinson. He's an absolute pancake monster. He's super strong at the point. They're going to run to the right. Their left side of their line's beat up, so they're going to run right. And I think Stevenson is really dangerous. And then Gibson out of the backfield is one of the best receiving backs in football. And Jermichael Hasty is a very good receiver as well. I think they're going to utilize those guys off screens, and they're going to, which is going to neutralize the Niner rush. I think based on what I've seen, the 2 receivers to worry about are Pop Douglas, who looks like, he's tiny, but he's so quick and he's so dangerous on these crossing routes. And it's like almost borderline unstoppable, really. Yeah. And then KJ Osborne, who was in Minnesota and was really part of the key part of why the Niners lost to Minnesota last year. We can talk about that, but Osborne is very much all these little rub routes and all these little 5-yard routes, sideline routes. He's really dependable inside of like a 7-8 yard box.
It's like fully actualized Ray McLeod.
Yeah, I mean and this guy's got great hands. The rookies are crapshoots, but I mean Thornton can really, really run. They got 2 tight ends who are very, very sticky handed. I mean, Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry are really good receiving tight ends. So what I see them doing is running Stevenson, short passing game, forcing the Niners into some man coverage. And when they get into man coverage, Brissett takes off and runs. He's got great feel of when to run against man coverage. If you give him a lane, he will, he'll take it. Excuse me. But he definitely runs against man-to-man coverage, and he's a great runner in that he knows when to run, how to run. He understands how to create a run lane by moving around in the pocket. Jacoby Brissett is not a great passer, but his feel of when to run and how to run is outstanding. So that's
everything but that whole throwing the football part of quarterbacking.
Right. Down. And he doesn't have good weapons, and they're going to struggle to pass protect, and he's going to have problems. But they're going to run the ball, and they're probably going to have success. The other way the Niners lose, Marcus Jones is a dynamic return guy, and their special team sucks. Marcus Jones is going to run one back for a touchdown in this game, probably against them.
That's a great call.
I would say that's pretty likely to happen.
Much like Kyle Shanahan, I considered special teams an afterthought here.
Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers are impact safeties that have they're a great combo. Why? Because they have the trio of traits. They both have size and speed and instincts, and they're really physical with great ball skills. So you're talking about probably the NFL's best safety tandem right now. Duggar is super physical. Peppers is actually probably their biggest hitter and leader. Those guys are difference makers in the middle of the field. Yeah. And then the other thing is, Keon White in his second year has emerged as an absolute star. If you really look at Keon White, there are 5 players in the NFL that have a 90 PFF pass rush grade. And they're Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Aiden Hutchinson, and this guy, Keon White, second year defensive end. He's 6'5", 285, but he's got bend, and he was good as a rookie, solid, 26 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 20 pressures. But this year, in 3 games, he's got 4 hits on the quarterback, 4 tackles. That was last week. I should say that was last week against the Raiders or against Rodgers and the Jets. But through 3 weeks, he's got 17 tackles, 10 solo, 3 TFLs, 4 sacks, 12 pressures. Now, the Niners do catch a break because Jaywan Bentley tore his pec and he's on IR, done for the year. And Christian Barmore is battling blood clots, and he's not going to play. But Keon White can absolutely dominate, and him and Josh Uche, the Michigan kid, play these games up front. And those 2 guys playing games, the 2 inside backers, Raekwon McMillan and Jelani Tavai, are tackling machines. And then Duggar and Peppers are elite, and Christian Gonzalez was a first-round pick. So I think if Keon White, he's a dangerous player because he's a 285-pound pass rusher.
You would never know watching him, and he stands up.
Yeah, you can never let this guy get a run at Purdy in this game, or it could be a season ender for Purdy. So you got to block Keon White. And somehow I think you got to have a run-heavy scheme because the Patriots' defensive backs are pretty good. But to me, it's like if you have not a great turnover day, I think the Niners are going to struggle to stop Stevenson. I think they're going to struggle to defend Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper in the middle of the field. With Campbell is going to continue to struggle.
Yep.
I think Douglas is going to be like, wow, look at this guy. Do they need Ayuk? This guy's way better than Ayuk. I think he'll have better numbers than Ayuk. Osborne's going to move the chains. So, I mean, take the 10. I would take the 10, and this could be a one-sided game, but even if the Patriots fall behind, I think that, between the Niners struggles to rush the passer and the weapons that they do have over there, I think they can do some quick strike. I mean, you got to remember this. Right now, teams are going up top on the Niners with success. So if the 49ers even get a lead in this game, if you're the opposition, you got to feel like you can go up top on them. So I like New England in the points, but that's how the Niners lose is the special teams gives up a touchdown and Brissett runs for a bunch of first downs and Pop Douglas makes 2 or 3 big plays and they do a crappy job of tackling Ramondre Stevenson. All those things not just could happen. In some ways, I almost feel like they are likely to happen.
Now, they all have to happen in concert, and then the Patriots also have to do one more thing, which is limit the number of possessions in the game overall, because they just you cannot give the 49ers crack after crack after crack. Benefit of the doubt is still deserved. Purdy and Shanahan will figure it out if you give them repeated looks, and they can't. Yeah, they're playing some games up front and stuff, but they're not mixing and matching like a Flores or a McDonald, right? They're pretty straightforward in what it is they do. Now, it's nice that they have great safeties. They can rotate coverages, things like that. But you give them multiple. You got to limit the game. You got to shorten the game. And ultimately, it just comes down to, it's so cliche. We roll our eyes every time Kyle says it. In this game in particular, it feels extremely prescient. You cannot turn the damn ball over if you're the 49ers. You can't do it. You can never do it. But in this one, all you're doing is giving them life. And I want to be very clear about this. If the 49ers lose on Sunday, and I think that the line would indicate that they won't, so did last week's line, should note. But if the 49ers lose on Sunday, it's done. It's over. We're calling it. You're not coming back from 1-3. You're not doing it. Sorry. I don't care how talented you are. You're not coming back from 1-3.
You don't think they can make the playoffs if they lose on Sunday?
No, I'm calling it DEFCON 1.
Wow. I think that's premature, but whatever.